In Nigeria, we don't know how to think politically. Take that word from me. Right, but before you cast a stone on me, I want you to pay close attention and be keen in observing every word I'm going to utter in this particular video. Because in this video, I want to share my honest, logical, reasonable opinion on something that I have seen that become a populous balance in our political ecosystem here in Nigeria. And that is the idea of religion. I mean, the centrality of religion in our government. And when I say centrality of religion in our government, what I mean is the fact that currently what most Nigerians debate about is what I call Christian ticket or Muslim ticket, which for me, for whatever reason, I believe cannot be able to scale the table of preschoolers debate. So I don't waste more of my time in discussing about that. But because of the current Vice President, His Excellency Kashim Shettima, I wanted to share my view on this. And the reason why I want to share my view is because it is very critical in our ecosystem if we must advance politically, advance economically, and advance religiously and socially, or whatever you can call it otherwise, right? So my question is very simple. Does religion build economy? Because each time I observe the biggest hurdle in Nigeria as it is not about religion. The biggest problem is economic problem. Our people are struggling. They are every day talking about the fact that for whatever reason, they don't have what to eat. And they're always comparing Nigerian economy to that of America. And so my own concern is this. Why do we keep on debating about this, what I consider to be topsy-turvy, angle-bangle, dispositional, litwit debates about who and who is to be paid together to rule a country? Religion, as it is, ought to be practiced freely. And the reason why we sometimes have chaos in our country is because we don't tolerate one another. And whenever you go to a country and you find people in chaos, it is because of intolerance. And intolerance is rooted in lack of education. When people are rightly educated, they don't fight one another. It doesn't matter the religion affiliation they may depend on. It doesn't matter if it is Islam. It doesn't matter if it's Christianity. It doesn't matter if it's folk, African religion. It doesn't matter if Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucius, whatever you can call it. So the whole idea is the fact that in our system, we are absurdly raised fundamentally. Our thinking pattern towards living in a harmonious ecosystem is flawed. And that's what I'm here to address. What you want to look out for when you want to choose a leader, it's not about religion affiliation. It is not about ethnicity. It is not about gender. And most time, it is not about academic qualifications. It is two things. And when you get this right, you are sure that your system will develop and progress in a positive manner. And what are these two things? They are what I call competent morality theory. If you go to my table right now, I have a theory that I'm developing, right? That is stuck on my table with an equation around it. I've crafted equation that is very simple. And that particular theory is competent morality theory, which is AKA leadership theory. It all states that what you need to be able to vet the authenticity and the quality and the capacity of a leader is what they carry as vision, and together with their moral uprightness, such as love, such as kindness, such as truthfulness, such as empathy, such as the ability to do good for other people. So my whole idea of that particular equation about leadership is simply C plus M equals to E raised to power bracket G close bracket. What I mean is that C stands for the amount of expertise, experience, knowledge, wisdom, vision that a leader has garnered over the years of his life. Whereas the M stands for Moral uprightness is what is in the leader. A leader who is able to love his people. A leader who is able to see the pain and the penuries of his people and is able to dive in deep in that and try to solve whatever is the drag of the society. These two things is the most pragmatic thing you can find in a transformative leader. And this is what Nigerians fail to be able to do when they try to assess the quality of a leader. So when YE raised to power bracket G simply means the ability or a trackable exponential growth of a leader. When you have these two things in place, it is easy for you to track what the leader is going to do for the society. So now, my question is, when you look at His Excellency Shettima Kasima and our dear own beloved father, President Bola Ahmed Adekune Tinubu, what they have done over the past 4 years, if you are reasonable enough, if you are logical enough, if you are truthful to yourself, are they advancing Nigeria in the right direction, or are they putting us in a system of regression? I must bet you, without any doubt, you see, I'm not a hypocrite, that these guys have done something that no other heads of state have done in the last couple of decades. And that is the capacity to put institutional reform that can transform the basic needs of the citizens in place, such that every citizen can now stand up and take their initiative and their genius and then wear it into the system so that they can be able to affect the system positively so that the country can develop. And that's what the president and the vice president have done. And if those are the qualities that they have been able to display within the last 4 years, who am I to be the one that will tell you that they are Muslim, they are Christian, or they are folk, which is traditional religion? Those are ideological flaws, debates that people should not even embark on. We are living in a country where we believe that every single one of us are the same. And I've said this time and time again, that if you take an average Nigerian, whether he be outside Yoruba, Igbo, TV, Efik, and you take them to America, and you put them there, and you pick a Latino or a Hispanic and say, point who is Igbo right here, or who is outside, they cannot be able to explain who is who among them. Neither can they be able to tell which religion each of them belongs to. Right? So religion in itself is not our problem. The problem is that we don't understand how to live together in harmonious terms. And that is rooted in our faulty upbringing. You are taught that Christianity is better than Islam. And somehow Islams are taught that their own religion is better than Christianity. Such people who believe in tradition believe that theirs is better. But what the country should be able to do is to look at a way, right, to create an institutional reform that is going to put religion in its proper perspective. Religion ought to be a free practice, but have to be subjected to the scrutiny of the state. And when that is not done, you have the kind of chaotic events that we keep having in this country with whatever Christian or Muslim. So I don't want to tell myself that I believe that Shettima should not be the vice president simply, quote unquote, because he is a Muslim. The question is this: can we get somebody who is more competent, more strategic, more cooling or shooting like Kashim Shettima? I believe we can't. And if you know that in this country, for sure, we practice partisanism too much. If you go to APC right now, which I dearly belong to, there are people who are, there are colossal number of people, magnanimous number of people who are Christians, but they are not raising up this particular issue. Is it because that they believe in APC? It is because they understand that Kashim Shettima is the most favorite candidate for this particular tax. So when you want to choose a leader that you are going to fill up into a very key strategic position, what you look out for is what we call competent morality theory. When these things is rightly verified in a leader, then forget about every other thing. The system is going to work. Now, let's look at it from the pragmatic aspect. Now, since President Tinubu and Kashim Shettima become the vice president of Nigeria, we have seen an upsurge in our economy. You know, most time they tell you that the economy of Nigeria has regressed to some certain level, that our GDP is now about $300 to $334 billion. But they don't tell you that there's something else that is happening within that particular system economically. Have you heard about PPP, purchasing power parity? There is never a time in Nigeria that our purchasing power parity is about $2.23 trillion. What I mean mean that Nigeria is the 19th richest economy in the world. What that means, again, let me explain it in detail, is the fact that it is easy for you to live in Nigeria than to live in most advanced countries of the world. You may not know that. And even most African countries, it is better and easier to live in Nigeria. An average per capita of purchasing power parity of a Nigerian is $9,860. That's colossal. That's mind-boggling. That's astounding, right? Let's take away that from the picture. Recently, the richest man in the world, who seems to have net worth about $800 billion, Elon Musk, has just pointed out the fact that the power game is changing by asking himself, how did Nigeria get themselves to become the 5th fastest growing economy in the world? That is mind-boggling. Nigeria is the 5th fastest growing economy in the world, right? We've contributed more than other countries in the last 2024, 2023, 2025. If you don't know it right now. Now, there are so many things that President Tinubu and his vice has done in this country that you cannot dispute if you have brain, unless you think in terms of absurdity. But if you logically dissect issues, then you have to agree that these guys are simply very, very intelligent, and I know how to reform a system for a country to grow positively, right? So let me just point something else again that you will want to know. Now, recently, President Tinubu have been able to, put in place where the local government is autonomous. They can now receive their own share and do whatever they want to do within the macro economy. And we know that the macro economy is very, very important in the system. Without the macro economy, a nation cannot stand. And that's why President Tinubu, based on his creative ability, has been able to devise a strategy, and then now it is constitutionally redefined in the system. What else again? Right? Recently, he has consistently urged the parliament to make sure that they look into the idea of state policing. And that is one of the best ways to cover these flimsy, insurgency, killing, banditry, kidnapping here and there around the country. Because when you have the people who grow in a certain geography being the one who manage those places based on the military idea and surveillance, it is easy to be able to discover who is doing evil in the system and who is not, because they can relate with them and they are traditionally rooted and they understand the custom, the norms, and the cultures of those people. These are things that President Tinubu is doing, and I can tell you for sure, deeply inside of me, that if you go anywhere in the world, any system of the world that has developed economically, politically, socially, and otherwise, this is what it did to be able to grow. You don't develop nations, and I tell people, months and years. You develop nations in decades. Let's say, for instance, you look at China. You call China every day, right? China is no less than 40 years. In fact, it was Xi Jinping who asserted succinctly that they found out that China had become weak, so they went to the West to learn, and after learning, he came back and opened the door and do what President Tinubu is doing recently. Now, let's talk about the foreign direct investment, FDI. Last year alone, I think Nigerian Act were able to attract about $6 billion in foreign direct investment. And there is an economic conference that is going to be held in Nigeria in 2026 by the President Tinubu administration, which is going to attract at least 80 heads of state of the world. And then with at least 800,000 participants. And that is designed to attract at least $5 trillion into Nigerian economy. How else do you want to develop? How else do you want to judge the authenticity, the quality, and the capacity of a leader other than these things that I'm mentioning, right? Now, if you look at our industry, they are growing at like an appalling rate, and you can't dismiss that. Just look at the banking and finance system, 20%. The IT industry, about 6%. The agriculture has moved from 3% to 4%. Yesterday, I think the Minister for Finance, which is Wale Edom, have released what we have actually been able to make quarterly of this year. We've actually grown. If you look at our foreign reserve has grown sporadically from $30 billion to $49 billion. Look at the reform that President Tinubu did within the oil sector by removing subsidy. That has actually made Naira to be stable and strong in the system. You may not understand this because you don't understand economics. Economics is not a child's play. That's why in China, you as an ignorant person or someone who is considered to be gullible in the system is not authorized to share your opinion on a certain subject, such as politics, because they know you are going to be introducing nuisance in the psyche of of the citizen. It is left for experts, only people who should be able to sit back and then interrogate and then be able to criticize the President Tinubu administration are those who are experts. You talk about the political philosophers, you talk about the economists, you talk about the business managers. These are the people who should sit back because they are experts. They know how systems are developed. They know how nations advance. They can sit back and then be able to veto if what President Tinubu is doing is right with what develops nation. Not you who is a content creator on the internet. Every single day you borrow this man, you hector him, you browbeat him for whatever reason, insult here and there. Why do you do that? Because you are ignorant. And that's why I say before you cast a stone on me, you've got to listen to the end of this video. So many things in this system has been rightly done. Look at the tax reform. Who told you that you can develop any country of this world without taxing the citizen? I see most people, because of the level of gullibility, it is outstanding that some of us, and I'm stupefied by the things that people say. They say that Tinubu is trying to tax poverty. And I ask them, do you know that the majority of Nigerians don't earn up to 500,000 naira in a year? So how do you think that those who are already exempted in the system are going to be taxed again? That's why you don't have to be ignorant. You have to study deeply. You have to learn. You have to sit up. This is how country develop. And another major reason why it seems that President Tinubu, to your own test, is not doing what he ought to do is because you are mentally and physically incapacitated to a certain degree. When you grow yourself mentally, physically, you tend not to blame the government. You ask them to put institutions in place that will allow you to bring in your genius, to introduce your genius, to shape the system, to redefine the system such that what you do can attract resources and impact on the per capita GDP of your nation, the nominal GDP of your nation, and the purchasing power parity of your nation. That is how to know that you are a quality citizen, not to daunt yourself around every day saying things that does not align with pure logics or fact. That is the problem in the country. So what I'm saying in effect is, if these guys have been able to do this within the last 4 years, why do you want to capitalize on religion? Do you want to take us back 2, 3, 4 years ago? Do you want us to go back for several years? I don't understand that. We have already started in the right track. There is no person, I must tell you for sure, that is going to rule this country in a modern Nigeria like President Tinubu. It's not, you may probably have hatred for him, right? But you cannot actually denounce or renounce the fact that what he's doing is extremely powerful and it is impacting the economy in a positive direction. So when you talk about so many things that people do in this country, you have to be able to applaud President Tinubu. You have to accord him that progress because he did it, initiative. So what I want us to do is the fact that I don't want you to start thinking about religion anytime you want to choose your leader. The first thing you're going to think is he competent enough? What is the quality of his experience, knowledge, capacity, wisdom, vision? Is he strong enough? Can you be able to veto the authenticity of that? And is he somebody who have moral uprightness? Because if you can have all the brains, but when you put in a certain position, you deplete the system. Let's, for instance, one of our sisters, Beze Ani or whatever it's called, she probably came at top of her class, but she did not contribute anything positively to the oil sector. Rather, she depleted and then siphoned billions of dollars out of the treasury account. Why? Because she had the brain, but then she didn't understand that you don't steal from your country. You use what is in the treasury account to build the nation so that the life of your people will be better. Otherwise, your education is flawed. You know, that's the problem. So when you have somebody who have the competency but does not have the moral uprightness, that's a problem in itself. Like I just gave you example. So you must have these two things in place if you must be able to develop economically, socially, politically, and otherwise. Our people lack the capacity, the logical ability to be able to dissect issues this way I'm discussing it now. And because they don't learn, they don't research, they don't read, they just take what I call the undiluted prophecy of the sages, such as the obestic obese, the Erufaiism, the Atiquism, and what have you. These guys come to the internet despite the fact that what they are saying is idealist, flimsy, flawed. They speak whatever they like. You cannot vet it pragmatically. Yet people are clapping for them. That is a prophecy of the sage. It doesn't make sense. Yet people are clapping. Throngs of people, the heads are jumping their hands to. I'm not part of that. You can actually disagree with President Tinubu, but you must commend what he's doing. You cannot disagree with Vice President of Nigeria, but you have to be able to commend what they are doing. For instance, when I knew for sure that this guy called Shettima is actually sound mentally was during the presidential debate. I can tell you for a fact, he sliced every person that was there. I'm not a hypocrite. You know, some of you are hypocrites. I'm not. I gave him up on that, even though people made a mockery and of him that he was wearing a tie that is as long as that of a Kilimanjaro. It doesn't change the fact that he was far more articulate than every single one of them. I'm not a fool. You see, these are the things you need to do as an individual. And this can only happen when you are educated. Education sets you free. It was Epictetus who said only the educated are free. And Montelli says something that that actually resonates with this idea that I'm trying to share in this particular video, which he says that the reason we have religious war is not so much so because there are diversity of religion. It is because of intolerance. And intolerance, for me, is rooted in wrong education. When you are rightly educated, you tolerate everybody. You don't think about tribalism. You think about unity. You don't think about religion affiliation. You think about unity. You don't think about gender. You think about unity. All this comes together when you are rightly educated. So another thing I'm going to tax you as an average Nigerian is to hold your parents and your teachers accountable, not just the government. The problem and the nuisance in the system are permitted and perpetrated by your parents and your teachers more than the people in power. Those people in power which you think for whatever reason are not performing the right way they should perform didn't fall from the sky. They came from homes. They were not taught ethics. They came from school. They were not taught civic education. And that's why some of them go to the siphon money, they steal, and they do all of these things. But it is in the interest of a single citizen or all the entire citizen to be able to sit up and look accordingly and look very keenly into the life of a leader before they pick him. President Tinubu did that in Lagos. Right, Kashima did that in his own state, and right now they are repeating it in the entire country. What you should be preoccupied with is other ideas that you should be able to tell your parliament or the Senate to infuse into the system to enable the economy to grow fast. Do you realize that without investment into the country, we cannot grow? For instance, if you hear that President Tinubu wants to borrow maybe $10 billion, all of you go around screaming and shouting and making all manner of useless, furious noise about it. There is no country in the world that you can develop without debt. Every country in the world owns debt. There is something called good debt and bad debt, right? The question you should be preoccupied with is the fact that are these guys using this money that is being borrowed in the right direction? Because right now, if you want to move from 50% service-based economy, in which we are, because 55% of our economy is driven by service, which is not ought to be so if we are going to lift our poor people out of poverty. It has to be driven by industrialization, which is what President Tinubu is working on with his Vice President, President Shettima. What you want to do is the fact that you have to think differently. And when you think differently, you can be able to say, okay, this is what needs to be done. For instance, let's say if you read someone like Disoro, he discussed in The Mystery of Capital that Nigeria has what he called trillions of dollars worth of dead capitals. What do that mean? It says that our land, our houses are not properly documented. Some of you don't know anything about the deed of ownership. You don't know about what it calls CFO. When you have all of these things, you can use your house to borrow money and do business. In advanced countries, these are how nations are developed. That's why you talk about China. That's what happens there. That's why you talk about Japan. That's what happens there. That's why you talk about South Korea. The leaders who build there, such as Park Chung-hee of South Korea, such as Deng Xiaoping of China, such as the Meiji Emperor of Japan, such as Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore. These guys did exactly what President Tinubu is doing right now. So you have to stand up and clap for him at least for 5 minutes. That's just satirical, but that's it. You have to clap for him consistently for 5 minutes because he's doing the right thing. When this foundation is rightly laid, oh my God, in the next 25, 30 years, Nigeria will become one of the fastest growing economy in the world, having us at the level of trillions of dollars worth of economy, where our lifespan would move from 53 to 80 to 70. How do you do these things without what President Tinubu is doing? You see, that's why I say most of the things we roam around, we sit around to debate around are things that cannot scale the ideological reasoning of a preschooler. So what we want is men who can think and men who know what ought to be done in a society to develop. That is my own view in this particular case. So what I say is this: pure, leave which religious affiliation that someone is. associated with. Look at their competence, their level of expertise. Look at their morality. If they are morally decayed, the system will not develop, despite the fact that they have good brains. Do you realize that Nigerians are one of the most intelligent people in the world? Yet the system keeps going backward. The reason because there is a level of criminality that is being perpetrated from our culture that has eaten cancerously into the fabric of our society that does not enable us to grow in the direction of progress. That is a problem, but morality can sort that out. So people in this country, I've spoken on this in the past actually, but let me say this. People do not steal because they come from poor family. If that's the case, I should be having gun, rifle in my hand. People do not do banditry or kidnap because they come from poor family. I came from a poor family. My father was a palm wine tapper. My mother is just a sit-at-home mother. We didn't have nothing. But I have never thought of stealing what would belong to me because I was ethically raised in the right way. I'm a child of ethical conduct. And what is left for me to live a good life is to be able to get a lot of expertise so that I'll be able to function well in my society. When you listen to this video, all I want you to do is to share it with your friends and family. Debate all you like. If you don't agree with what I've said in this video, you can send me a message and then we can go on a Zoom and debate it further. And I will explain to you why President Tinubu must be voted back into power in 2027 with his Vice President Kashim Shettima. If you have any other problem that you think that is in the system you want to bring in, let me hear it. But I'm going to tell you that nations are not building months or years, it's building decades. And what they are doing right now is laying the ground foundation that will determine the level of progression that we are going to achieve in the coming decades. It can never happen on its own. That's it. That's it. So I'm here not just to defend religion because I don't see that as a problem. What I want is the government to create a structural institutional policy that can put religion in its proper perspective, that does not allow other people to infringe on other people's privacy or put them down for whatever reason, probably because they associate with a certain religion. Each religion is good on its own. Now, let's be very factual. Every religion has a fundamental basic idea, which they are here to share, to love one another. You may disagree with that, but every religion talks about love. That is the fundamental or the central theme of every religion. They may not use the word love, they may use the word kindness, all of that, but it's all about having good love and good heart towards your fellow human being. If that's the case, why do you want to fight your brother and say, oh, because you belong to Islam, I don't want to put you in this power? Despite the fact that I know that when you are here, everybody's going to rise. There's something that our brother W.E.B. Du Bois talked about, a talented tenth or something like that. What he says that the best of the best in a society should be allowed and should be resourcefully helped to grow, such that when they grow, their help will become a help to others. That's what you should look at. Don't look at religion. Don't look at tribes, whatever. It was Michael Samora who said that for the nation to exist, then the tribe must die. That's the biggest problem. If the tribe does not die, nation can never exist. I don't think in terms of Igbo. I don't think in terms of Yoruba, Hausa, TV, Efik, even though I'm from the Igbo extraction. What I think in terms of nationalism, Nigeria. I don't know what is Igbo. What I know is black people in Nigeria. I want to make my people better. And once I make them, everybody better. That's all I want. It's not about me. It is about we. When this mentality is deeply engraved in our understanding, in our faculty of reason, everything will be altered. Our life will have a harmonious balance. This is my own view on this. You can have any other things. I could go on sharing what President Tinubu have been able to do in this particular economy that is going to terrify you to the highest degree that most people don't want to comment for whatever reason. I call them the prophecy of the sages. Despite the fact that see the truth, the fact is there, everything is there. They just tend to, shed it away and not give it its appropriate commendation that it deserves. President Tinubu and Kashim Shettima deserve a second time in Aso Rock for them to lay the right ground foundation for this country. Pray and then hope and then have the capacity to be able to assess the leaders that are going to come when these guys are done by 2030, so that when they are done, you can now ask yourself, okay, which people can continue in what they have done. That's it. Not about religion. Today is Sunday right here. It doesn't matter if I'm a Christian. It doesn't matter if I'm a Muslim. It doesn't matter if I believe in tradition. Whatever I believe doesn't matter. Where you understand that there's a deep problem in Nigeria is, have you ever had anyone in Nigeria get angry, get furious, get aggrieved about the fact that people who believe in traditional religion are not choosing to become vice president or choosing to become the president. Does it mean you don't have those people in Nigeria? As a matter of fact, these people have been here before Christianity. These people have been here before you have Islam. So why is it that you don't bring them into the picture? Do you think there are no people in politics who don't believe in Christianity, who don't believe in Islam? There are colossal number of them, magnanimous number of them. Why is it that you don't discuss about these guys? Because you think in an erroneous way. You ought to think in a very creative, analytical way so that you can be able to compartmentalize everything and then include everybody. A nation can never thrive unless it is rooted in inclusivity. If you read the book Why Nations Fail by Darina Smorogu and James A. Robinson, the book is powerful. It's all about institution. It is institution that makes a nation to be strong. And that's what President Tinubu and Kashim Shettima has done. Other people keep telling you, you are hungry, that's wrong idea. They're not able to explain economics to you. That's it. If you get this, everything is going to change. So, right, guys, don't forget, I remain Captain Africa, and this is my own 2 token on this particular issue. See you on another video. Bye for now.